Hi, everybody. We are waiting on one more member, and Jeff will not be able to join us this month. Again, I'm really hoping that he'll be able to be here for November. Welcome to our EDIC meeting for October 19th. That is today, 2021. Redo of September's attempt at a meeting. Here's Cassie now.
There you go.
So what I'd like to open with, hi, Cassie. There you are, is an opportunity to approve August's minutes. We did not have a meeting in September. We could not meet quorum. So I'd like to review August's minutes and then we'll get into the rest of things. So has everyone had a chance to review the minutes that Josh very helpfully resent this afternoon?
I did.
Yes.
Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move to approve.
Oh boy,
Second.
It's a tie between Josh and Mo. Amazing, very good. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving August's EDIC minutes from the 17th, holler aye.
Aye.
Very good. Unanimously passed. Nicely done. Okay. In the absence of public speak representatives, I would like to throw out there that it would be ideal if we had 9 members again. So if you know people, you want to talk up the job, let's get people to submit a letter to the mayor and get her nomination process going. I would love to have a complete set of EDIC members.
Do we have 2 open spaces or 3?
We have 1.
Okay.
We are only meant to have 9 members.
Okay.
So I'm going to close. I'll keep that. Okay, so we don't have any updates from the planning department today. What I do have is related to another part of our agenda. Is there anything that anybody would like to add to today's agenda that you definitely want to get going so we can add it toward the end? Okay. So I think I propose a quick continuation of our discussion of social media presence. We can briefly touch on downtown transit if we think anything has changed there. Does anybody want to share any evolved thoughts about the downtown transit related ideas, given that we are headed into November? Okay. I think that is on the back burner then for now, yeah?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. Like for the foreseeable future, are we going to start talking about it in spring again, or do you think that this was an opportunity that is not really going to pick up?
No, I think we should still explore it, Gwen. We can look at the possibility as we did before of the senior bus or the one from the Boylston room, but you raised the question of liability. Right now, there might be an issue COVID related. People might not feel real comfortable cramming on a bus, even though you're going to end up potentially at an open air venue. But I believe that's more, I could be wrong, but I believe that's more good weather related.
Yeah. I agree with that. All right, so maybe we pick it up midwinter and do some thinking about that in anticipation of spring. Social media presence. So at our last conversation, we reached I guess I would call it a conceptual impasse where we're struggling to figure out, is this worth doing? Is this really reasonable for us to be doing as the entity that we are? And I did a little, I had a little informational interview with a friend of mine who does social media for a job, and asked her some questions based on who we are as an entity at the municipal level and her thoughts on social media platforms, etc. So my thoughts to share from her are these. And these are things that we can add on to what we've already talked about and decide to come back to it in the future. Or they may change your ideas. I don't really know. So her perception is that given that we are a group of volunteers appointed to the role, our regular meetings are relatively infrequent, 12 a year largely, that time to do this sounds more challenging necessarily than the content and being able to follow up in a consistent way. Ideally, a solid social media presence has a routine, it has consistency, you are saving things that you see for posting later, you're monitoring comments, that sort of thing. You can turn off comments, or you could have a canned response to comments or questions. We could send people to a specific email address or whatever else if we wanted to. That canned response could just be, thanks for your feedback. The back end, with there being ideally 9 of us, unless we determined that a subset or a subcommittee was going to be solely responsible for this, like that administration side of this could be more challenging because it's a group of individuals who are collectively represented by such a presence online. She raised a question of, should we just submit our own content to another presence that is already associated with Easthampton municipal thinking anyway? I brought up the idea of a blog. Currently, we've been talking really about Facebook because that is where that's where a lot of Easthampton lives, on Facebook, and it has a certain amount of Instagram presence in certain sectors of the town, but I don't think that that's where the majority of people who are online using social media are most comfortable. I don't know that for sure. I don't know if we know a way to know that. But her perspective on blogs is that they are a dead medium, which makes a lot of sense to me. I was reading blogs in the early aughts and haven't read a blog since. What about Twitter? She has thoughts that Twitter could be an interesting place to have a presence. Her perspective is that in our area, superintendents, town officials are using Twitter to relatively good effect. Where does the public really go to hear things, though? Do they go to Twitter? Not really certain. So we have some questions to either decide to do more research on or continue thinking about how we would manage the time and the consistency, like what it takes to make it worth doing in the first place. So having said that, I invite your responses and follow-up questions.
Quick question.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I missed who this input came from.
This input came from my colleague at the Collaborative for Educational Services, Ashley Barton.
Okay. Ashley Martin?
Ashley Barton with a B.
Barton, okay.
Gwen, spending the last 6 years or so of my life on the school building committee, a lot of information, well, I'll start with the other side of it. A lot of community, individual queries about the project or comments or shots all seem to come out on Facebook, seem to get a pretty good response. Pat Rupp, who's the vice chair of that committee, was really good at going back to the experts, getting the right answer people were questioning and coming back with it. It seemed to be a forum that did not only gather people's questions, comments, but was pretty good about responding to them, because someone like Pat is good at monitoring Facebook on a regular basis. I guess I wonder if there's, I don't know if you've all heard of the Easthampton group page that's on Facebook. I'm not sure who the administrator of that is, but I wonder if there's a way for us to latch on to that page.
Is it the good news page?
Yeah.
That's Pat Bruff's page.
Pat.
Yeah, Pat administers that.
I'm not sure, Josh, if it was the good news page or just the Easthampton. It's called like Easthampton group page, or not the good
Yeah, I
news.
think there are separate ones, yeah.
There's
Okay.
two
The good
separate
news
ones.
page has a different intent.
And I know that Easthampton, not the Pap Ruff one, but the other one has an administrator that basically tries to somewhat police what goes on there, especially if it gets out of hand. And the good news page is good too, but I'm wondering if we could latch on to those pages and simply post information, if you will, or whatever content we were talking about, which isn't going to be a ton of content, I don't think, but from time to time, post projects, issues we're addressing, things like that on that page, rather than create our own page, which brings in all the issues that Gwen just mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate option to try to streamline the content that we care about to an existing presence that has an existing set of engaged people. I think figuring out, I still think it's worthwhile. I like that it has an existing administrator or administration, probably its own internal understanding of who's doing that. I think we would still want to have our own sense of, do we have a canned response to feedback? What is our expectation for engagement? But I do like that very much. Other thoughts?
I'm not a big social media person, myself, but I did recently learn that you can schedule the posts in advance. And it just makes me think just out loud. I mean, if we decided that we wanted a certain tempo, maybe we wanted one post a week or one post every certain number of days or whatever, we might be able to, try to generate a piece of content in advance each month and then look at it or put it together and then, could all see it as a committee, maybe even at a meeting or whatever. And then that could be whatever content kind of goes. If it's the kind of content we can come up with that could be done that far in advance. I'm just speaking out loud. I really don't know.
Yeah, I think that is a primary consideration is, how do we decide and when do we do that? Because scheduling is really valuable. It makes it different when some new information comes up and you're like, oh, well, I'd like to do that instead. How do you make sure that there's a structure that exists that makes it possible to do that with whatever, like you have to have a policy for who's going to decide whether we post this and this represents EDIC, So, I think you have to decide whether that responsibility lies with a person and you trust that person and they are known as the person for EDIC social media, or whether it's something that the entire EDIC needs to bless or a subcommittee, and how frequently they're going to do that. I think that's the main consideration there. Mo.
So I think that in order to do like scheduling posts and things like that, to piggyback onto somebody else's site, that might be a bit challenging. But I also wondered, I should just throw that out there, and then I wonder to piggyback off of somebody else's page rather, would the city planning page be a place that might be appropriate or inappropriate? I don't know. Seems that we're kind of connected.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I'm not sure, Mo, what the complications would be in piggybacking. I mean, we just, to Gwen's point, we would just have to have somebody who's a member who is allowed to post. I'm looking at that site real quick. 9.5K. That's 9.5 thousand, right?
Yeah.
That's how many members are on the Easthampton Mass group page. That's like 2/3 of the population of Easthampton.
Well, I'm just wondering, like when Gwen had mentioned, we meet 12 times a year, how often would we really be posting? And for us to be posting on our own, from our own page, I wonder about how much content there would really be to make it, to sustain it and to keep people's interest. So, but if we were to piggyback off of the city's page, planning department's page, we wouldn't necessarily have that pressure of posting every couple of days or whatever it is that you need to have engagement.
I think that it's right that if you were passing content through to an existing page that had its own content happening pretty consistently, that it wouldn't be as big a question of having really consistent, like once a week, once every 5 days, even once a month. So that does seem more feasible. And also, we have to think about what are we willing to consider at meetings? Is this something that would need to be an extra meeting? How much time are we willing to devote at a meeting to deciding what we're going to post? Is that not how we would make those decisions? Yeah.
I think one of the challenges to any social media presence is how do you get your message to the most number of people? And here's an existing audience of 9,500 people that if you were to post something that said, hey, beginning May 1st, we're going to have a transportation available to go to Food Truck Fridays. If you'd like to get picked up at these locations, 9,000 people see that as soon as you post it. I think I'm thinking, Gwen, of those one-offs like that, like here's an event that EDIC is, or here's a thing, sorry for lack of a better word, here's a thing that EDIC is going to institute or bring forward or whatever. It's a one-shot deal, like Mo said. There's no updating. It's informational, if you will. 9,500 people see that when you post it. And I was looking real quick, and I can't tell for sure, but based on someone's post here, it almost sounds like Stan McCoy might be the administrator of that site.
Could be.
I think I heard that Stan was. I don't know if he still is. I think at one time he was. He might still be. Something else too, like if we did have that program launch, I mean, as far as content goes, even repeated each week saying, oh, like, on Friday morning, hey, just so you know, the thing's running tonight and this is the times. And that even its own becomes a piece of content that's reusable.
Yeah, I think that is a good, yeah.
Sorry.
Cassie, go ahead.
So sorry. I have people who are friends on Facebook whose posts I have never seen because Facebook does not escalate their posts to my list. So just because people have followers doesn't mean they're going to get your messages because of Facebook's algorithms. But I have to, like, Paul, I am very, what's the word? I think it's a nefarious organization, but that's just my own bias.
Incidentally, you can push your posts out to go to more people. You can force them out, but you have to pay for that service. So,
is that what you do, Josh? Just kidding.
No, just everyone loves me.
See, you have to pay to get people to look at what they've signed up for.
Right. So, and that said, the more engagement that you get, the more likely it is that it shows up in people's feeds, et cetera. It's not a very straightforward business. So I think that I think that making this decision is slow going, and that's okay. To make this decision wisely, we need to be really thoughtful about what exactly are we willing to post. Is it just things like those pretty rare times when we're like, we're associated with this really fun, uncontroversial, apolitical thing out in the community? Is that the kind of thing we are willing to post, or is there more that we want to say and be known for? And if there's more that we want to say and be known for, then we need to be able to identify those categories of things that we care about associating with our posts. We need to come up with a way for deciding amongst us what those posts should say, when they should go out, who is going to be responsible for that, and how frequently. So it's, oh, there's Mo again, pardon me. I think it's just not that straightforward.
I have a thought maybe. Right now Facebook is not very popular, and its demise I don't think is anywhere imminent. But there are a lot of people who are just turned off by it. I'm wondering if there's a way we could do something without using Facebook. I mean, if we put out there once in had some big effective way. I mean, multiple, maybe like the newspaper and something that the city of Easthampton could send out, offering people to sign up for alerts from the EDIC, whether it be text to their phone or a flash email to them. Then we wouldn't be concerned about feedback and comments and stuff. But it would just be a way for us to get out to the community what we're doing.
Like a listserv.
Yeah, listserv. My wife from the back room said, good idea.
You could put a sign up at the library, at the store,
Yeah.
police station, blah, 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 blah. That's an interesting idea.
I could see it being almost like a newsletter even, or like an email version of that. Periodically, oh, this is what's going on, stuff we care about, but also has stuff that's just, just plain informative.
That way we would have time to craft our message, and we wouldn't be dealing with with comments that come back, negative or positive. We could just, this is what we want to send out for this week or this month, and here it is. There it goes.
I'm okay with that. I just don't, having been in the position I was in for so many years, I'm not one to try to avoid negative comments. If there are negative comments, I think we need to hear them and deal with them. So I wouldn't want to necessarily try to dodge them. And if, when people throw out negative comments about the school, it gave us an opportunity to research their comment, determine if it was accurate or not, and respond to them with factual based information that they could take it or leave it or still complain, but at least it gave us an opportunity to address where the rest of that world saw the question, saw the complaint, and saw the response. If somebody just came out and said, I think this project sucks, that would be like Gwen said earlier, thank you very much for your comment, or whatever. But when someone comes back and says, gee, I've heard the new school is sinking already. Well, a comment like that can catch fire if it goes unchecked. So we did the research, we brought in the architects, the engineers, and formulated a very professional, educational response to that comment. As much as it was like saying the earth is flat, we felt the need to respond to that quote unquote negative comment.
I agree that we should be able to hear. I think what I was trying to avoid is having one person's comment be able to go out to tons and tons of people, especially if they're saying something negative like, oh, we should hear negative as well as positive comment. But I mean, they should be able to send a message to us without having it being seen by the rest of the world.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, if I have a thought too, I mean, I think that it is important that we can be responsive to the community. If we had an email that people could send comments to or anything like that, we could review it. We could even choose certain ones that maybe are interesting questions or things that we feel like should be addressed. And we could have that even as part of our next newsletter. Like, oh, we got these questions. Here are responses that are informational and helpful. And then when people just email us stuff that, is whatever, then we just don't include that. Oh, we don't like economic development. That doesn't go in the paper.
Okay. I think that's worthwhile. It sounds to me like something along the lines of a summary of some of our meeting minutes and our plans for what's coming next, basically. So to some extent, a newsletter exists. It's on the Easthampton webpage in the form of our meeting minutes. So there's that. Tell me your thoughts in response to that rather glib response.
I think people look at minutes and they already have an idea as to what they're going to be like. And it's not necessarily, it's reporting, which we should still have it up there, but it's not necessarily crafted. If we wanted to craft a message, I think we could do that in addition to having our minutes be up there. And the other thing is that people could opt in to have a proactive message sent to them in the form of something we craft. And it does, it could be monthly or it could be any time as we see fit even. But I think my main point is that it is more interesting and useful perhaps than just merely minutes.
Okay.
I would also say we could use it to highlight successful businesses or things that are happening in the town that, maybe aren't a matter of discussion in our typical meetings, but, help us build content and just kind of share some of the more positive stories in the community.
Paul said something that triggered a thought. I just can't remember what it was, but I remember the thought. I don't remember what Paul said. Sorry. But, we haven't had to do it yet this year to the best of my knowledge, but if you recall early in the year, Jeff had suggested that there might be projects that will be coming along that might be somewhat controversial, development, what have you, that we will be asked to take a position on. And that position may be in support of something that a lot of neighbors are not supporting. And that's where that crafting, the message, if you will. If we were going to, it's water over the dam now, but if we were going to come out early on and support the new Dunkin' Donuts out on Route 5, the neighbors aren't going to like us, but remember our mission. We're supposed to be supporting development and new business and what have you. We might have been in a position to take a position on the marijuana facility that was going to go on Northampton Street that all the neighbors opposed. Those are the types of things where EDIC might find itself in a hot seat. And if you recall what Jeff said to us was, hold on for the ride. We can't shy away from taking a position just because we think it might be controversial or because the neighbors don't like something going in their backyard.
I agree with that. I think, too, we can somewhat protect ourselves or insulate ourselves from a little bit of criticism by, just taking positions that are really focused on how it will impact economic development. And say, yes, we understand there are other concerns. Not everybody is going to add up the pros and cons the same way, but in terms of from a strictly economic development perspective, these are the ways it would help our community.
Agreed. Tax base, things like that. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Jobs.
That's what we are, right?
Yep.
Okay, I like where your heads are at. This is along similar lines, like we need to craft what a plan would look like for how we decide who's writing it, what's going in, how frequently, that sort of thing. So do any of you think of yourselves as one of the people who wants to be involved in writing a newsletter?
I would.
Okay.
I would just personally avoid calling it a newsletter because a newsletter has the connotation that it's something that's going to come out on a regular basis. Right? News from EDIC,
Yeah.
and it might come out 4 times a year or something. Who knows? But
or as needed.
Exactly. Gwen, I had one other thought real quick. I don't know if we have any limitations on what we can or can't do and where we can or can't do that because of the fact that we are a city organization.
Right.
So I don't know who, maybe Jeff could answer that.
He might be able to. I think we would need to get some guidance on that. I don't know how much of that would be wrapped up in open meeting law. I think it's a different kind of question, right? Because we could decide according to something that open meeting law applies in some particular way, or we structure it so that whatever the content is gets determined in a way that doesn't flout that. And there's probably something to be said about how we communicate in the first place.
Also,
Yes.
could we call it a periodical?
Yes, we could.
Periodical.
Is the senior center completely funded by city money? Because wouldn't they have the same rules and they do a newsletter? Just trying to think of parallel departments.
Mm.
It's not completely funded, Cassie. They do rely a lot on grants.
But is it under the authority of the city?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
The director reports to the mayor.
Ah,
Right. I think that's an interesting, it's a different kind of aspect, right? Because we don't report to the mayor, really. I mean, we're appointed by her. It's not quite the same thing. We're not employed by the city.
Right.
We are meant to follow the same ethics rules as employees. And I don't know. I think we need some guidance on that. Suggestions? Who do we talk to? City COUNSEL? City Council?
We could. I mean, is the question whether or not we can make like public statements? I mean, what's the real question about what we're allowed to like put out into the public?
I think it's the idea of signing up for information rather than making it available in a place that literally anyone could access.
Oh, got it. Yep. Makes sense.
Is that right?
I once had a boss who said, it's a lot easier to ask forgiveness than ask permission.
Totally agree.
Sure.
But if we're not doing anything harmful, I say we put something out, and if someone doesn't like it, we might get our wrist slapped, and then we can find out what we've got some momentum here. I don't want to lose that.
I think a way around it too, if we made like a simple website and we could put each one up on there, and maybe that's where people would go to send in their email to sign up, and that might cost us a little bit. I mean, but I bet the city would pay for it. It'd be pretty cheap on a yearly basis, and then there'd be no like issue with people saying, "Oh, it wasn't available to me because I wasn't on the list."
Okay. I have no idea
Not that
whether
it's a
the
great
city
idea,
is
but
ready
it's
to pay for that or
potential.
not. I think that I like your idea, Josh, and I am a rule follower who feels stressed about doing that at the level of the city of Easthampton. So I'm going to say we're not doing that.
Okay.
That said, happy to see some kind of draft. If there's something that you're like, hey, how about this? Would love to know the kind of thing you're thinking of. And I think if we want to do that, I think that it's something that we need to build into how we market ourselves to prospective members in the future and be like, hey, this is a part of a thing that we do. Because you're the one who raised your hand when I asked who thinks of yourselves as a writer. We got one of 6 people. And we've got 2 others who aren't here, and maybe they're interested, but I just want to be clear that we would maybe need to decide, is this something that we always definitely do and somebody's got to be the one doing it, or what, that sort of thing. So in case Josh Rosenblatt decides he's won the lottery and it's time to go now, do we still have a periodical?
Well, I mean, I think this starts to get back into a more scheduled thing. I was initially thinking of have this be a medium or mechanism that we could use when we had something to say. And I wouldn't want to have the onus of coming up with content every X period of time.
No, I understand, but somebody does have to create the thing. Someone has to do that.
And I'm happy doing that, but I wouldn't. I would feel just as comfortable with anyone else doing it because it would have to come in front of the group before anything went out.
Yeah,
Right.
I think anybody should be able to submit content or make changes to content and make them as suggestions.
Okay, Mo?
I'm just wondering if through all of this, if we're trying to recreate the wheel, I think we have opportunities through the meetings, and I think that's what makes us different than other entities, is because we have regular meetings and we have public speak and all that sort of stuff, and that's where people should really be coming to ask their questions. I think I think maybe the focus might want to be, rather than having all of these other things to manage and all of these other places to be, is how do we simply get, I shouldn't say simply, but we try to make it simple, but getting people to come to the meeting so that it's, we're not reinventing the wheel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear you.
It's just, I feel like we've been talking about this for so long, and it just,
Yeah.
I think it's a bigger lift than we're giving it credit for. And to be asking one person to always be that person, it's kind of tough. I know that just from my place in the universe, it's a challenge for me to keep up with all of that in my sphere. And it's a tough thing. I don't mean to sound like a Debbie Downer. That's not my point here, but.
No, I understand. I think that the intent is recognizing that in a physical space, imagine we were in a room together, a real life room, at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. There's limited physical space for people to be at that meeting. To watch an entire meeting, it involves watching a lot of process, watching a lot of dithering. It's not, sorry, we dither beautifully. I love dithering with all of you. The outcomes are not necessarily easy to find even in the recording. And so I think that the idea of this is to highlight the outcomes of conversations, the things that are coming that are exciting, the one-liners. So I see that as the merit of thinking like this. But I understand the idea of how do we reduce the burden of it for existing and future members.
And I think, Mo, that was Josh's point. I'm not trying to oversimplify this, but this is not going to be something that's going to be on a clock or a calendar and has to be done by the 4th Tuesday of the month to be published by the 5th, by the next week or so. This is something that's going to be on demand, so to speak, when something comes up, when something happens, when there's information we want to get out. So we're either talking about, maybe it could be a platform for explaining the vacant property issue, or it could be a platform for us supporting a certain project or development in town. So, I'm not sure I see this having to be done, 4 or 5 times a year, maybe. I don't see it on a regular basis, like 12 times a year. With that said, Gwen, I know we threw it on Josh, but I think once the framework is created, and Josh would have that framework of how it works and what he does, what have you. I think if he did hit the lottery, somebody else, well, first of all, we'd all be related to him if he hit the lottery. But secondly, I think someone could step in with that framework and fill in the blanks. I don't want to say fairly easily, but someone could pick up once it's creating the animal that is the problem.
Yeah, that could be true.
And I don't want to beat a dead horse about Facebook. I know all the issues. I know the controversies and concerns, but was it Yogi Berra that said nobody goes there anymore because it's so busy? You've got 9,000 people you can get your message out to. I know not all 9,000 might not see it, but wow, I'm not going to get 9,000 people at an EDIC meeting.
Well, Tom, that could be a good way to get one of the many good ways to get our initial message out, saying, hey, if you're interested in what we do, sign up for our listserv.
Yeah.
That could be one.
Yeah, but it could be informational even, Josh, in the beginning. Hey, did you know about EDIC and what EDIC's mission is? And build on that as an opportunity for them to sign in to get information.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So my proposal is that we table this conversation until our next meeting, perhaps as we get through the next big topic. I wonder if people want to end our meeting today with saying whether or not we'd like to begin the idea of a listserv draft with what we talk about. Maybe that's just something that's on the back of our minds in all of our meetings. Is this something that we would want to share with people, or are we not at that stage yet? Is it okay with you to table for now to move on to the next section of our agenda?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we had an opportunity to talk with the ordinance committee a couple of weeks ago in a very process-oriented way about our proposed vacant storefront language. And what we got from that, did I actually write down the answers? What day was that? Was it September? It was. Nope, I didn't take any notes. Cool. Cassie, did you take any notes? So our takeaway, I think, was they would like us to show evidence of having shared our thinking with landlords who could be affected by this. And they said that that is part of what they would be doing in their review/revision of it, that there would be some kind of shared burden. I have also since received an email saying, could you send us your language and process so we can get it going? So I think maybe they think we meet more often than we do. So I said, well, not until I talk with the rest of EDIC at our next meeting. So one of the guys that you maybe talked to, Cassie, maybe he's the city planner for Northampton. His name is Wayne, maybe. Got in touch with me through Jeff Bagg and said, I hear you've got a vacant storefront ordinance moving through. Could you send me all of your language? And I went, certainly won't. I will send you what Allie Carter from Arlington sent us and say that it is heavily based on that. But no, I'm not prepared to share that outside of EDIC yet. So people are paying attention to that. The ordinance committee was very enthusiastic about this, and it seems like they would like to get going on it. The fact that they said, well, yeah, you guys should do some of the work, some of the legwork to talk to prospective landlords affected by it, and we'll do some of that work, and there will be that public meeting where people can discuss it. I was like, and why do we have to bother doing it? So I'm interested in your responses to that. And Cassie, if I've missed something, please share.
I would just support 100% what you said. Why do we have to do it if they're going to be doing it anyway?
Yeah.
You know, we've got the idea, we'll put it forward. But what do other folks think?
I think, Cassie, they want us to do it. And who's the they, by the way? Who is the three counselors that are on that?
Ordinance is Derby, Zaret, and Peak.
Okay. The reason they want us to do it is because they know it won't work. And they want us to fail, with all due respect to those counselors. Reaching out to these affected, okay, of the six of us, let me know who can get in touch with Jack Moriarty and have a conversation with him about this. It won't happen. People have contacted him and offered him hundreds of thousands of dollars for his property on the corner of Union and Main, and he doesn't respond. He's not responding to, others aren't responding to, queries about cleaning up this or doing. I can't imagine the affected landlords are going to respond to us. I don't know how you'd get them to respond. Send an email, send a letter.
Right.
The only
we
way,
don't have any clout.
Well, what if we just documented the fact that we sent them such and such a letter?
That could be all we can do.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. Thank you. Yeah. Josh, we did talk about a letter. I think Arlington had said that, right? They sent out a letter in advance. And I agree. If there's no response, that was our attempt to reach out and give. I mean, all they're going to do is complain about it or something. Or I don't know. I don't know that it's going to get and I hate to keep picking on Jack Moriarty, but Shop
Why?
Row is almost vacant.
Yeah.
The ones that are left at Shop Row, I understand, are looking for other locations.
Oh,
That's a historic part of Easthampton, that part of Main Street.
shame.
And, it won't be much longer and it could be totally vacant. And there's no effort to do anything with it.
So, Paul, you've got a very workable letter that, as long as we ensure that it reads like this is a draft that is to be considered by City Council, it is not the law right now. I think that that is a worthwhile thing to send. I think that we need to be, I don't actually know how prepared any of us need to be particularly responsive to any feedback of any kind. We need to understand what we've proposed so that if ordinance has questions, we can respond to that. And they may take it at its intent and not at all in its process or proposed logistics and do something entirely else. I don't know.
I think we just kind of collect the feedback. Maybe we hear something that's interesting that makes us want to make some tweak to how the program might work. But other than that, we can just say, look, we came up with this. This is the language we have. This is the feedback we collected. We're giving it to you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mo, do you have any input on where we're at in this thinking yet? Can't hear you, but you did unmute. Rats.
And this letter would go to all the businesses in the district, correct? Not just the one.
We made that that preliminary list of pretty visible ones in the main business district, didn't we? It's the ones that are all the way around the Rotary, on Main Street, on Union Street, and Cottage. How far up? I don't know how far up those roads we went or how far off of the main paths we went with that spreadsheet. It's a relatively short list. There's like 18 shops on it, storefronts.
Right, because some of them have the same owner. And we just
think we're just in the downtown area.
Right, I believe at Jeff's direction, he was asking us to avoid Northampton Street, if I recall.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Here we go. It's this one. I will share it with you. Yes. So Main Street, Union, not far up Northampton Street. Oh, there isn't anything on Cottage on here. Yeah. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 owners.
I'm not sure why we don't have Cottage, but maybe because there's no vacancies.
Yeah, there are problem vacancies.
Yeah, I think the vacancies have really quickly turned into not at all vacancies. Haven't they? It seems like storefronts are open there right now.
Yeah.
I just thought, though, Gwen, that we had to cast a wide net because we can't just single out one or two businesses.
Yeah, no, I hear that. So I think that we had a back and forth in the early summer about whether we wanted to include businesses just in general as we're driving by, wherever they are in Easthampton, and just say this is an Easthampton level policy versus a main business districts area. So we can expand this list, or we can say this represents 11 different landlords. Let's start with 11.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I wish Jeff were here. I'm not sure about starting with 11 as opposed to if I own a building on Cottage Street and you don't send me a letter today and my building becomes vacant tomorrow,
Yeah.
and I leave it vacant for an extended period of time, I'm not sure I can be governed by that ordinance when I know nothing about it.
Well, I think that that's ordinance's point, is that they're going to go through the process of what they have to do, which is draft something, and then there will be a public comment period, and there will be a public meeting where people can come and provide their response to it. So it isn't just on us to collect that in the first place. It's part of the process of it becoming how we operate in the city for them to solicit public input at those meetings, et cetera.
So what was the request again? For us to reach out to the affected businesses?
Well, I think it was kind of a mixed message. It was, yeah, it'd be great if you got some feedback, and also that's sort of required in how we do this in the first place, and we would do some of that, but it would be nice to know that you did some too. Right, Cassie? Okay.
They might just be looking for a heads up if there's something that businesses are going to say that's going to be, if they're going to get a headache from it.
It was definitely, it would be nice if you ... And I have to say, Owen Zarrett said that we better hurry and scurry and take care of this. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
In Central. I will also add to this conversation that when Jeff told me that he couldn't be here today, he added that, I'll read this quoted to you. At some point before the vacant storefront ordinance is officially up for a public hearing, we should talk about how best to introduce it to the new building commissioner, as we've just hired a replacement after months of a temporary position and a couple years of turnover. She starts on November 3rd, and it may be an appropriate courtesy to let her have a review of it, since the building commissioner, has some enforcement role. I think this can happen in November without disrupting the process, as long as the ordinance subcommittee does not send it to city council for approval before she sees it. I mean, that seems really unlikely given that we're at October 19th. So
what if we send out a letter to all property owners in our district, the area that we're looking at, just everybody? We're thinking of this. It's going to be going to ordinance, but to get your feedback incorporated into the initial draft, please send your comments to blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
What about that? It's an approach.
That's where I thought we were going originally, Cassie. Just blanket.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were only doing the people on the list.
No. I agree with you. That's why I was questioning the list. I thought we were looking at a blanket approach, not just this 11 people, but if you start at the head of Northampton Street and go down to Nini's, if you will, or Casella.
Perfect, yeah.
Everybody gets one like it dropped out of an airplane.
Right. And now I'm realizing, Mo, you're back, and I assume that we may have fixed some of your audio. You want to try sharing your thoughts at this point? You're on mute.
Still mute.
Still muted. Oh, man. Send me an email.
Still muted.
Oh, rats. Okay.
Turn the radio down.
I'm sorry, Mo. Technology is annoying right now.
Unmute her as chair.
I unmute her. Ask to unmute. It's not letting me. Oh.
There you go.
Hey.
There you go.
Try that, Mo.
You're live, Mo.
It's not working. Oh, no. How annoying. I assume you're saying a lot of really nice words that we should quote in our newsletter. Mo, we can't hear you.
She's volunteering to own the newsletter.
Yeah.
Can't hear you. Voluntold. So
I would support what Cassie recommended, that we hit every single business owner with a letter.
yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah. Wait for the feedback.
Guys, do we think that there's an existing email we can tap into that is for EDIC? Or do we need to get one set up? I can ask Lindsay Mailer.
Does the city have an email for all business owners? Is such a
I
thing?
don't know that either.
Ooh.
No.
Okay.
I kind of doubt it.
The chamber may have it if we could hear from Mo. The chamber probably has. The question, Josh, might be whether or not Mo can share that or not.
Well, then the other alternative is just to have it be a mass mailing through snail mail.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
what I would
thinking maybe we print out a bunch of paper copies and we leave them at store. I don't know. But for people to give us feedback, I would like it not to be email Gwen. No, thank you. I would like something that is associated with the city of Easthampton, and I don't know if that already exists, like EDIC @ and we can get access to it. I have no idea. So I will ask Lindsay about that.
Okay.
Because then we could put that as where people could respond. Yeah, Paul?
Yeah, I think so. Something that's at easthampton.gov.
Yeah. And do we would we want to put it on like city letterhead?
I would think so. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, Gwen, to your point, it has to come across as this is being proposed or this is a draft rather than scaring them that it's something that goes into effect tomorrow.
Yeah. And I think that your letter does that, doesn't it, Paul? I haven't read it
I
recently.
think so, but yeah, I haven't read it in a little while.
Okay, so we can come back to it. Maybe you've already sent it. I think we can share it around again. I already have that. I can share it with you all again, and I will. Well, so what do you want to do about this? The timeline, I feel pressure, but it is okay with me if we put up a bubble and say, no, sorry, our next meeting is whenever. We can also decide to have another special meeting. It's what kept up our momentum in the spring, and we can say that in a week or 2 weeks, we come back and say, and we're going to focus on the letter, and we're going to make the decision now, and then it will get sent out, yada, yada. Is that a preferred approach?
Let's rock it. Let's do it.
Yep.
Okay. Is that okay with you, St. Pierre?
When would it be?
I don't know. When people have time. When do you want to meet?
What about if people don't want to come, could we appoint a subcommittee so that we don't have to worry about a quorum?
Good idea.
Yep.
I just
If we
definitely can't do 2 weeks from today.
How about 1 week from today?
I can't
Probably
do
can't
that.
do that either. But you don't have to worry about me, you know.
Or we don't have to stay on a Tuesday necessarily.
It's true. We don't. Let's see. I mean, we could probably play with timing. I don't want to necessarily take up people's evenings, but I am far more available after 5 p.m. than I am before 5 p.m.
How about at 5 p.m.?
Yeah.
How about Wednesday, November 3rd?
Yeah, I think that's more workable.
Okay. All right. So shall I send folks an invitation to 11/3 at 5?
That
Got
work?
it.
Right. So I will send around that letter again so people can review it. I will find out about letterhead and EDIC related email. So we don't have to think about like a mailing list. We can imagine that we're just going to send to storefronts.
I think so. Commercial addresses.
Well, just remember that the majority of storefronts aren't the owner of the building.
Right.
So I don't
So how do
know.
we do that, Tom?
I'd have to ask if Mo has a list that she would be able to share.
What
All right,
about
so-
the assessor's database?
I like that.
Yep,
Most lists are only going to be people who are part of the chamber, I would think.
that's true too.
All right, so that we find out from the assessor.
Yep.
Okay, I can write to them.
Cool.
It's right online.
Is their list public?
Yes.
Oh, well, okay, great.
I can do that. That's fun. I love playing in that database.
I just don't know, Cassie, if it gives you the address of the business owner.
Could we send it to Tom Smith, 22 Cottage Street? Please forward if necessary.
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
It shows the effort. That's all the ordinance committee wants, is that we're to see that we've taken this step.
See, I guess what I was getting at is it's going to show that the owner of the building where Silver Spoon Restaurant is Jack Moriarty. It may not tell you what Moriarty's address is. We happen to know his lawyer's office is up on Northampton Street, but that's my point. If you send it to the Silver Spoon, I guess you could say, please forward to the owner.
Yeah, I would say address it to, what's his name, care of Silver Spoon. And, if each of his businesses gets one of those, at least one of those is going to end up to
him.
Or we can also show we've done our due diligence. And that's,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
You may find, Cassie, in that program that you can drill down and find an address somewhere of the owner.
I'll play with it. Definitely.
Thank you.
Cool.
I could look
right.
up what everybody's house is worth.
So then we can find out whether we have access to city money for stamps or whatever, whether we need to drop these things off in person, I suppose. Okay. Cool. Cassie, you're doing that.
Yeah.
Great. November 3rd at 5. I'll send you a link when I get it from Zoe, and we'll find out about this other stuff. I technically set this meeting to go till 5:15. Is there anything else that we should discuss at this point, or shall we get out of here and resume on the 3rd?
Can we finalize the regs on the 3rd? I mean, the ordinance
Yeah, we ought to.
draft? Okay, great.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we get out of Dodge.
And Gwen, you'll send some stuff out in advance of that, like the letter. It might be
Yes,
buried
sir.
deep in
We
my
shall.
email.
Yep.
I second Josh's motion.
Thank you.
Any further discussion about Dodge and getting out of it? Great. All in favor. Mo, I'm going to assume that you are fine with this. Let's holler aye and go.
Hey.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.